Welcome to the Publishing Performance Show, the podcast that helps self-published authors turn their passion into a profit. Now, I'm your host, Teddy Smith, and if you're serious about building a sustainable business, then you're in the right place. Every week, I sit down with successful authors, industry experts, and publishing professionals who share their exact strategies they use right now to how they've grown their business, grow their readership, increase their book sales, and essentially to make a bit more money. Now, whether you're just starting out or you're looking to scale your existing publishing business, you'll walk away from every episode with actionable insights you can implement immediately. Now, if you're new here, it would really help me out if you could subscribe either on Apple or Spotify or YouTube or wherever you are. Just simply hit the subscribe button. It really helps the show to get more reach, which means we can get better guests for you and we can help you out in more ways. All right, let's dive into this episode. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Publishing Performance Show. Today I'm really happy to be joined by Michael Stewart, who is the community lead at Sudowrite, which is one of my, well actually it is my favourite AI writing tool. So Michael, thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, no problem. And the first question I wanted to ask was, do you think AI makes people a better writer or just a faster one?
Ooh, that's such a good question out the gate. Well, I'm biased, naturally. But I think it can do all of those things. You know, asking that question, I think just to put things in context here is sort of like, hey, did the computer make people better writers or did it make them faster writers, right? And the answer is like, well, the computer sort of democratized access. The personal computer, the home computer, democratized access to this sort of tool and the resources available through it. And so I think of AI as a technology through that lens, where the answer is to your question is sort of, yes, I do think it does both things, right? It's a little bit the sort of ratatouille, anyone can cook sort of thing. It's like, well, anyone can become a great writer through these tools. It doesn't mean that everyone will necessarily be just because this tool's available.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are quite lazy and then they just blame AI for lazy writing. And I think that's kind of maybe the problem. It's not the AI itself, it's the way you're using it. Do you think there's any misconceptions that people have about using AI, especially for fiction writing?
Oh, that's a great question. I think there are lots of misconceptions. And I think, AI currently is a part of the discourse. And with good reason, right? Because AI is a technology. And as with most technologies, the sort of like big massive tech companies are holding a lot of the strings there. Where AI is a little bit different is there are a lot of open source efforts as well, and there are a lot of small shops that are doing their own sort of model training. In any case, because big tech is involved, there's a lot of thoughts and feelings and opinions because of the way big tech went about training some of these models, right? And so there are some sort of well-placed criticisms, but my feeling is always like, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's like some really excellent uses of this technology, of this tool. It can be used to powerful effect. And I think that my hope is that one day we all think about AI as a technology as much as we think about databases, right? How often in your day-to-day do you think about database? Not all that often. And yet it is a foundational, important thing to navigating the internet, to doing everything you do day to day. And I think that AI will really have its moment in the sun when we think about it far less.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's what we were talking about just before we came on, about how much AI is changing over the last few weeks. We're recording this in the end of February in 26. So everything is talking about Claude bots and things like that, and how it's going to change. Do you see any of that stuff affecting writers?
Absolutely, I do. So actually a week ago, 2 weeks ago, there was a large profile in the New York Times of a few writers in the romance space that have accelerated their process. So actually one of a Sudowrite user named Sonia was profiled in this piece. It was an excellent piece in the Times. And it highlighted how these folks, how their workflows have evolved from really working hard to get 4 to 6 books out a year. That's a huge time commitment to versus, going anywhere from 10 to 12 books a year, where you're on sort of a book a month schedule, to 200 books a year, which was just unthinkable prior. And I think, the improvements that we've seen is these tools are very quickly being adopted by writers. Writers see, they sort of recognize the utility. And what's wonderful is because AI is this sort of like amorphous, flexible thing that sort of like any part of your process that you're struggling with, there is an angle by which these AI technologies can support or assist your workflow. And so I think it's been really neat to watch and to be a part of.
Yeah, definitely. We've sort of jumped straight into what AI does without really talking about what Sudowrite does. I kind of assume that everyone has heard about it before, but could you just give us a bit of an overview of exactly what Sudowrite is?
Yeah, so Sudowrite is an AI creative writing partner. It is a toolkit. You can think of it if you've ever used Google Docs or Microsoft Word, a text editor. That is sort of, we built it in this familiar way where it's not intimidating. You just write in there. But the difference is that we've given it a whole bunch of AI features and AI tools to support different parts of that writing process. We do focus primarily on fiction, but we have folks that are nonfiction authors, folks that write screenplays or blog posts. We have users that are all across the board. And so we support writers of all stripes, but we have slightly opinionated design when it comes to Sudowrite, where we sort of assume that you're going to be writing fiction, right? And so specifically sort of like long form fiction, where we expect that the majority of our users are going to be folks that are novelists writing novels.
Yeah. One of the reasons I love Sudowrite so much is I'm a bit of a messy planner with novels, especially. I basically just brain dump everything I want down and get it into like one document, and I could just upload it to Sudowrite and it kind of starts to make sense of it, which I think that's the perfect use of AI, because it's taking your thinking and then organizing it, putting it into a structure that you can like use to actually start writing your book properly.
Yeah. And that is a struggle. So my background is actually in journalism, right? Many years ago, like professional background in journalism. And so nonfiction was sort of my bread and butter for a time. Now though, like basically I identified my faults writing fiction pretty early on, where it's like, I'm a perfectionist. I can't finish the first chapter because everything needs to be just right out of the gate or it just can't be on the page. And that's sort of, I won't say it's wrong, because I know there are other people like me out there, but it is a challenge. It is very hard to work that way. And so working with a tool that has sort of accelerated my process and let me get to, forgive the phrase, the shitty first draft a lot faster, I'm like, okay, I'm great at the edit. I love the edit. Like for me, that is like, a slash and burn sort of thing. But getting that first draft on the page was always a huge struggle for me. And so
that blank page syndrome is like, it's real.
Yeah, no kidding.
Well, I thought what we could do today is have a look at some of the main use cases for Sudowrite. That's because obviously we could just go through here and just say, you can write your book, you can start at the beginning, and that's how it gets done. But there's 4 things that I get asked about the most.
Sure.
And that's being stuck as a writer, how to write quickly without ruining the quality, how to make your characters deep and sort of realistic, and then looking at the editing and the polish. So I thought we'd go through 4 of those use cases to see like where would be the best ways to use Sudowrite. So let me just give you a bit of an example. Say I've written 25,000 words of a novel. I want it to be around 50 to 60,000 in total. And I'm a bit stuck. Where would I start with Sudowrite? What would that first task look like?
That is a great question. So what I will start with is that we make no assumptions that you're necessarily going to be writing that initial 25,000 words inside of Sudowrite, right? And I would say one of the most common use cases when authors first find Sudowrite is exactly what you're describing. They're like, I have half a book and I just petered out. I just hit this sort of threshold where I couldn't keep writing. And so stuckness is one of the main things that we think about. And so there are a couple of ways to bring work into Sudowrite. You can always copy paste, obviously. You can do that anywhere. But we have a proper import where you can bring that file into Sudowrite to get started on it. And we also have something that is sort of an AI enriched import. We call it import novel. But it doesn't have to be a novel. It can be a work in progress. It could be a finished book. It could be a messy pile of notes. My favorite use case is they're just like, I had a very, very long conversation with ChatGPT and we cracked it. We know what the novel is. I want to get it into Sudowrite. And you can do that. You can take that. Exactly. You can take that whole thing, feed it into import novel. And what Sudowrite does is it adds some of the structure that you're talking about, right? And so the first thing that we do is we read whatever you import like 9 times, and we set up a detailed story Bible for you. So we say, hey, here are all of the characters that we detected. Here are all of the important settings that we saw you reference and other world building elements like this item that may come into play, your MacGuffin. And so all of that gets cataloged. You get a detailed synopsis, and you also wind up with a sort of structured outline. And so you have half a book, 25,000 words, you're bringing it in. And so this is where I would put the question back, because this is what I often do when we have folks in this situation is they say like, okay, I've got 25,000 words. I want to finish the book, but I'm stuck. I imported it. Story Bible looks great, but still now what? And so the question that I put back to them is like, well, are you stuck locally? Like, are you stuck like finishing the scene or the chapter? Are you stuck in some local sense, or are you just stuck? Are you stuck structurally with the work? And so there are some questions that an author needs to wrestle with themselves and still identify. But once you've done so, at that point, you can figure out if I'm stuck locally, and there's a sort of paradigm in Sudowrite where you can flip back and forth. You don't have to. We have people that are pantsers. We have people that are plotters, right? People that love outlines, and people who are just like, no, I'm a discovery writer. I'm going to figure it out as I go along. And so our toolkit sort of like offers these paths where you can go either way. If you're stuck locally, you would use something that pantsers often use, these discovery writers, which is the write button, right? It's exactly what it sounds right. You put your cursor right at the end, you click the write button, you're going to get the next anywhere from 150 to 1,500 words, depending on your preference. You just set that. You can even choose which sort of AI you want to do the work there, which voice you're looking for. And it is like a brilliant autocomplete, because it's not just reading all 25,000 words prior to that. It's going to look at that story Bible. It's going to make sure it's true to your characters with whatever it's generating. So that is like, that's half of the answer, right? That's the list stuck locally. What if you're stuck structurally on this work? And that's where it is a bigger question. We actually have a big feature in the hopper that I'm very excited about for this, but we have built something previously called the import report, which exists in Sudowrite as a plugin. I don't want to use jargon here, so I'm just going to say that Sudowrite has a whole bunch of AI features out of the box. Yeah. You come in, you have rewrite, you have brainstorm, you have all these cool things. But pretty quickly after building Sudowrite, we started getting these questions for really niche tools that the AI could definitely do, but they're sort of really specific to an individual's workflow. It's like, I'm converting my novel. I want to convert my screenplay into a novelization, right? This sort of thing. And it's like, so we're probably not going to build that feature, but we know that AI can do it. So we opened up Sudowrite, and we built this plugins ecosystem, which you can think of just the same way you would as a browser extension, right? And now you can just say in Sudowrite, I need a tool that does XYZ, and there you go. You get a little button that does that exact thing. So import report exists as a plugin. You can run an import report on your imported work, and it's going to do that structural analysis. It's going to say, I see what's happening here. Like you had sort of a false start at the beginning, right? Or you didn't ground this character, or maybe you're using save the cat. There's no save the cat scene, right? And so it'll do that sort of analysis and let you know where you should dig in. And then the world is your oyster. You can figure out how you'd like to slice and dice that.
Yeah. And so how do those tools help you diagnose exactly what's wrong with the scene? What does that process actually look like?
Yeah. So that can be accomplished several ways. I will say that something that I often share is that like part of the reason it's hard to give a specific walkthrough of Sudowrite is that it is a flexible tool, and we've designed it to be flexible because workflows are so varied. It's not just the plotter pantser paradigm. It's sort of the sequence, the people who like focusing on like, I really spend a lot of my time on the first draft. I love the first draft, versus the people who are like, I hate the first draft. I want to spend my time in the edit, right? And so because there are so many different preferences and workflows available, we've built this flexible tool. And what that means is that for every question there's usually 4 to 5 answers. So like, how do I do XYZ on Sudowrite? How do I rewrite a passage? And I could rattle off 5 tools. I'm not going to do that right now. It's boring. But I could rattle off 5 different tools that would let you rewrite a passage. And part of the answer is like, well, what do you prefer? Like, what is natural to you? What is part of your workflow? And also, like, what is your end goal? Like, what are you trying to get to? So when it comes to diagnosing, you said diagnosing a scene. I will just share from my personal workflow. I will pop into the chapter that I'm working on or trying to troubleshoot, and I will highlight the sort of operative passage where I'm like, I don't think this is working. And I'll use our chat. So we have a persistent chat in the sort of sidebar, which is great because you have your document here, you have your chat right here. And it is, I say it's more powerful than ChatGPT because it has your full context, right? It has all of your documents in its brain. It has your story Bible. And so I will often say, hey, this isn't resonating for me. Like, can you read this? I really liked what we did in chapter 3. Can you tell me why this doesn't feel like it's working? And it'll respond with 3 or 4 things. And the thing that I want to call out about this chat-based workflow, and the reason I like it, is because I'm not typically a confrontational person, but I feel very empowered to be confrontational with a chat, with a robot. And so I can say, it's none of those. Yeah, you're wrong. No, those are not why. But the thing is, this is a clarifying exercise for me, right? It's because it's like, well, I know what it's not now, but it's something else. And so through this back and forth, through this sort of iterative discourse, we help zero in on it. And so I like chat because it's not sort of a click a button, get a response and have to chew on that and see if I believe it. Chat it's a dance, right?
Okay. Just a quick shout out to all the romance authors out there. Now, if you're tired of shouting to the void every time you launch a brand new romance book, then let myromancereaders.com do the shouting for you. They have a list of over 18,000 romance readers who love getting books when they're on discounts or on the free promotion. And it goes into their inbox every single day. It's got an amazing open rate, and every promotion gets on average over 600 clicks. That's a lot of new readers for your new series of romance books. So head to myromancereaders.com where you can sign up today. Yeah, I really like the chat function. It's a bit like a local. Have you used Google Notebook LM? Have you used that before?
Yeah. I like
it.
Notebook
Feels a bit
LM.
like that, where you can sort of chat with your documents a bit, and you can ask questions about what's going on. I really like that feature. Yeah,
and I think it's also a lot more flexible than people necessarily think. Right? They see a chat and they're like, "Oh, I have ChatGPT. I can ask for stuff." But it is sort of. There are people whose workflows are almost entirely inside of Sudowrite, entirely chat-based, because pretty much anything you can do through a button, whether you're looking for richer descriptions, whether you're looking for a sort of scene diagnosis or analysis or feedback, all of these things on Sudowrite, you just need to know how to have the conversation, right? The same sort of way you would with an editor, as long as you can articulate what it is you want or articulate what it is you're sort of like looking for or not satisfied with, then the chat can be really helpful.
Yeah, definitely. In the second use case, so this is something that I actually did when I first signed up to Sudowrite. I just wanted to test it. And I just wrote a book literally as quickly as I could. And I did it in genuinely like an hour or something, but it wasn't that good. It was like, it was kind of like barely even a first draft. It was, I didn't give it enough information. So how do you balance that? The difference between writing fast and also without losing that quality? Like, could you explain what that workflow would look like on Sudowrite?
Yeah. I think the reason, basically the only thing that people are bound by today, because of technology is where it is their own personal standards. If I had lower standards, I could have a few hundred books available on KDP right now. But I value my name. I don't have a pen name that I want to do that with necessarily. And, and I value the reader's time, right? Mm-hmm. And so this is where I think the question of quality does come in and should absolutely be a consideration. I think you can, and I've actually done this in the course of, speaking on Sudowrite at conferences where I'm sort of clicking buttons while being on stage, and we get almost through a novel behind me on the screen while we're presenting on this. And so it is totally possible. I think that there's the most important sort of mindset here is that AI, so Steve Jobs famously called the computer a bicycle for the mind, right? It is this sort of accelerant, this sort of thing that sort of like lets you go places, lets you go further, faster, go places maybe you wouldn't have gone before intellectually. And one way to think about AI, this isn't my preferred metaphor, but one way to think about AI is pedal assist. Riding a bike that has one of those little battery packs that just like sort of takes some of the effort off. It makes it feel more easy and breezy and effortless. The reason we do what we do is not to necessarily just have people creating books faster, but to allow the authors to spend more of their time in the parts of the process that they love. You want to spend less time on the tedium, on the sort of like, oh man, he should have been a she, which means I need to go back through my whole manuscript because it's hard to sub pronouns because you're using them for other people. And so I need to go back and read this whole thing and do this. But that's a task that AI is great at. It is like, it can read the surrounding context and intuitively sort of replace not just names, but the sort of surrounding pronouns and nicknames and dialogue styles for what that character was saying. Circling back to your question of like, how do you maintain sort of quality? You still have to love the writing process. You still need to sort of be involved as the author. Recognize that your role may have shifted from some of the tedium, some of the like administrative work to being something more of an orchestrator, but you're still the author. And you still need to be executing on your vision to a standard that you're happy with. And what this means is essentially like, yeah, you could crank that pedal assist all the way up, but you're not going to burn any calories if you do that, right? And so like finding this sort of happy space where you're vibing, right? Where you're like enjoying the process, you're hitting your sort of word count goals and not necessarily going faster just for the sake of going faster.
I really like that analogy of saying, you still got to, if you're not writing it, you're just basically just taking yourself out of the process. Like, why even bother doing it in the first place? If you really want to use AI just to make money, then writing is really not the best way to do it.
Yeah, there are a lot more profitable ways to make money with AI. Yeah.
And so in the third one, I think one of the things that I've seen my favorite writers do and some of the more successful writers do is have those really deep characters that you can kind of identify with and understand exactly what they're doing. If say your characters are feeling a little bit flat, is there any way that Sudowrite can help you to maybe raise them to another level?
Yes. So there are a few different ways, a couple of things. First thing is that I love our character section of Story Bible. And so what's really neat about it, in the past, this, like when Sudowrite first launched, Story Bible used to be called Story Engine. The character section was like a text field, and it was just like, make sure you write your characters down so you have some information about them. But was that last year? 2024, we sort of rebuilt it entirely. And now you can have as many characters as you want. You can have as many traits as you want on each character. And so what's really neat about this is it's helping you as the author stay on track, making sure you have a mental model of like, which side of his face was the scar on? Oh, it was over his left eye. He had this big gnarly scar. And you have that documented in the physical description section of your character card. So it helps the author stay on track, also helps the AI stay sort of factual and accurate. So it's a win-win there. But that's not everything, right? Like as an author, I have a custom traits. You can set custom traits, and it's an Enneagram type. And so you can say, hey, this character is a Enneagram type 2. They're the helper. And so they always want to be in this supportive role, even to their own detriment, right? And so you can include these details, which again are both for your reference and for the AI, so that it can pull those details and weave them in as it's writing a scene. And you see this happen with with dialogue. If you have a dialogue style, it will write honest to the character, but also with these sort of psychological traits as well, like the Enneagram type, things like that. So that's one part of that I like. And then the next part of this is sort of additive on top of that. With these rich characters sort of like documented and built out and saved in the Story Bible, you can do something. So originally we built this as a plugin, but you can now do it through chat. There's a plugin called Characters Prompt the Author. This was built by a colleague of mine, Ryan, and it's really neat because you can highlight a passage and you can say, hey, you're Timothy, Timothy, what's going on in your head in this scene? Right? And so the AI looks at who Timothy is in the Story Bible. It internalizes this character. And then through the eyes of Timothy, it reads that scene and it gives you sort of a report back. It says, hey, here's what I'm thinking. I would be like, why would I say that to her when I actually do love her? This sort of prompting that maybe you as the author, you're either too in the weeds or too abstracted from. But now you can do that same exact workflow as well with chat, right? Where you can tell chat, hey, chat, we're going to do a role play. You're going to inhibit the role of Timothy. And I have some questions for you based on how this scene played out. And so that is a lot of fun. And it's a great exercise, a great unstick it. And it helps you get to what you're talking about, which is that sort of emotional truth, emotional depth of these characters.
Yeah. It's kind of like having a co-writer almost, which is amazing. I think one of the things that people have the most blocker on, I think sometimes, is having to work by themselves and having to internalize all these questions. Like having someone where you can spitball with a bit and just try and understand where your thought process is going. That is super helpful.
Yes, that was my most productive time in my life, was when I had a roommate that was also a writer, and we would get each other excited and help each other get through. Yeah. Outside of that, it can be hard, at least the way I work. It's hard to have sort of everything up here and no one to bounce it off against.
Yeah.
And chat's great for that.
Yeah. And so for the last one is the editing and the polish. Now, I think for me, when the books I've written with Sudowrite have actually end up going via an editor anyway, just to make sure that everything is clear. I think that for me, that was really important. Other people are different, but I still used Sudowrite to make sure that it was kind of as close to where I wanted it to be as possible. So when you say you've got what you think is your final draft, what would that editing process look like, and how would you try and use the editing process to elevate what you've written?
Yeah. So we do have a feature. It's a little bit older on Sudowrite, called feedback. And this version of feedback that's available today it sort of reads half of your manuscript at a time. It can handle up to, I forget if it's 30, 40,000 words. And what it gives you sort of 3 readers, almost like beta readers, pseudo readers sort of perspectives on it, where it says, here's what I liked about it. Here's what was hollow. Here's what didn't work. And so that is one exercise I like to do, is run the feedback. The other thing is, I'm opinionated about this because I feel like one of the reasons in the discourse that AI catches some heat is because people who don't spend enough time in this final draft, final edit phase, right? I think that the least that you can do, I feel like one of the last things that should happen is a human reading this from start to finish, because I have seen the things that always catch attention are where somebody left part of a ChatGPT response in the middle of their, fortunately yeah, exactly. How does that look? I could try it again in the middle of a manuscript. That's tough. Fortunately on Sudowrite, there's no, chat's in its own space. Yeah. It's never going to be writing in your document. But that aside, I think that the feedback tools, there's an incredible ecosystem of plugins that we actually have. So there's a whole category called editing in our plugins ecosystem. And these are folks who are like, look, really what I'm looking for are copy edits, or what I'm looking for are line edits or developmental edits, right? And so it sort of depends on what your final draft editing process looks like, that you can dip into the plugins ecosystem. But the other thing is, I will say, because you can't appear on a podcast without teasing something fun, we actually have an update to that feedback utility in the works. It is in it's sort of private beta right now, but this is really cool because for the longest time, people are like, I actually have a finished draft. I just want to come into Sudowrite to do the final pass cleanup. And our tools are okay. And a lot of that was done either through chat or like I said, the editing plugins. But now we have a first-party tool in the works that is incredible, that lets you select precisely what you're looking for. So you can say copy edits, line edits, developmental edits. And there is, what's the other? So things like consistency, we get people asking about like consistency checks, anachronisms, right? There's all these sort of things that you may be looking for. And there's even a custom edit type or custom feedback type where you can say, hey, I always want to make sure that the dialogue rings true to the character and that they never contradict themselves over the course of this. And it'll read your whole manuscript. And what's really neat about this, I'm probably saying too much because this feature is not publicly available yet, but it goes through and it highlights your work and leaves comments on your work with sort of like, hey, here's what I noticed, which is, I'm very excited to get this in people's hands.
Wow. And so with that editing part of it that you just talked about, what sort of feedback does it look at? I don't want to ruin the surprise when you launch, but what sort of things is it trying to pull out of your draft?
Yeah. We demoed this for a small group recently. It sort of depends, which is to say, when you click the tool, you get a little pop-up and it says, hey, which of these feedback types would you like? Are you looking for sort of structural edits? Are you looking for line or copy edits? And then, like I said, there is the freeform field as well. In addition to sort of the consistency or accuracy checks, there's a freeform field. So it's really entirely up to the author is what's neat. You can say, hey, I want you to read this whole draft and look for places where these two characters that hate each other speak. Like just that's what I'm looking for. And it'll read the whole thing and like highlight these sections of the manuscript for you. Because I want to read all those scenes myself, but I don't know how to find all of those scenes, right? If I search by name, and so it is flexible and it's designed primarily for feedback, but it's like leaning much more heavily on the AI than some of the other stuff that we've done.
Yeah, that's incredible. I can't wait to see that. Do you think it takes away some of the work that a human editor would need to do, or do you think it is a different job, or is it different types of books need different types of editing? Like, where do you think it sits?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it can. I think that where the value of the human editor is still in the expertise, right? It is still that like, as someone who is not a professional editor, I can get my book to what I feel like is a first draft, but it's the unknown unknowns that are the issue, right? And this is where the human editor still adds value. If anything, a tool like this allows that human editor to execute faster and execute maybe to a higher degree of quality and maybe look for things in their time with the manuscript that they wouldn't have looked for had they been in the weeds, going over the manuscript with a fine-tooth comb. I think that's still valuable. And I think, like I said, last look from a human is still ultimately what we want. But tools like Sudowrite are being embraced by ghostwriters and editors as much as they're being embraced by authors, specifically because of the sort of like I said, you're shifting the work in your process to the parts that sort of you like and you're good at and you excel at, and you're letting the computer do computer things.
Yeah, perfect. That's really good. That's really helpful to help unblock those, because those are four of the main things I get asked about with fiction writing. So it's good to see how Sudowrite can unblock them. So I thought I've got a couple of more difficult questions to finish, because you used to be a journalist, as you said, so I thought I'd keep you on your toes. What is the worst way that someone could use Sudowrite?
The worst way? Unpack worst for me. Like worst, like...
Well, what would give you the very worst outcome? Like, what will give you the worst?
Okay. What would be the? Yeah, that's a good question. I think the thing that you illustrated early on is like the worst results you could get out of Sudowrite would be being minimally involved in the process, right? And I've illustrated this. I can go in, I can type a 2-sentence brain dump, and I can say genre, sci-fi, style, sounds good, like some other author. And then I can just hit generate, and I could step through that process. Sudowrite's going to execute and do its job. It's going to create a detailed synopsis, ultimately a complete outline. And then I can go through and rely on generation of scenes, generation of prose. I could hit my, 3,000 words a chapter, and I could do all of that. And the end result will be something that looks like a novel in essence, but reads sort of miserably. It's going to be boring. It's going to be clichéd. It's going to lean heavily a good thing to like a mental context to have about AI is it's a probability engine, right? And so what it's going to do with minimal human intervention is do what it knows. It's going to execute, it's going to hit all these boring notes, and the results are going to be readable, but not anything worth writing home about.
Yeah, no soul, I think is
Yeah,
kind of like,
exactly. No soul. And this is the counterpoint to that is remembering through every step of this process that you're the human, you're the author, you're in the driver's seat, everything, challenge what it gives you. I think that you get the best results by reading each chapter summary that it proposes for the outline and saying like, I don't think that should happen in this chapter. Or I think this should be this other character. And you just go through and you make these like spot edits to every single thing that the AI generates. And again, you don't have to, but by doing so, you're sort of wresting control and making sure it's executing on your vision. And the words that you read on the page at the end of this process, even if you are generating scenes and generating prose, if you've been involved in that setup process, the end result, or the maybe not end result, but the intermediate result winds up a lot better.
Yeah. Have you seen any authors become a bit too dependent on AI?
I will say no, but that's only because I think that's sort of a survivorship bias, right? I think if you're too dependent on AI, one of two things happens. Either I don't know that you're using AI and you're keeping a great lid on it and you're doing a great job with it and nobody knows.
In which case, just carry on.
Yeah, in which case, good for you, but you kept that from me. Or you're just sort of not in our... So I work with our community at Sudowrite. We've got a Discord server of like 16,000 plus authors, humans in there. And it means if you're too dependent on the AI, you're not showing up in our server, you're not writing into support, you're not, you're just off in your silo, right? So I will say I have not seen any authors become too dependent on AI. That is not to say that some authors may not be, but I also have a hard time, other than the examples I cited where it's like, okay, I was lazy and I left evidence in my book that hit, the Kindle store. Other than that, I don't know how I would even know.
Yeah, perfect. And last one is, because obviously with AI, and it goes back to our first question about like the worst ways of using it, but because everyone's kind of using these same models, is there any risk of everyone's writing starting to sound similar if you're being lazy, I suppose?
Yes, I will say that was a risk before AI, and I will say that it is maybe even more an acute risk after AI. As you know, like there's only so many different AI models, and while those models may sound different due to their training, the actual sort of like words that you get out of them, again, are probabilistic. And so what that means is that the way the AI works, it wants to sound convincing. And so I do think that like if you're not involved enough in the process, and being involved in the process can look like different things. It can look like the sort of style prompting that you're giving it. It can look like that, or it could be that thorough last edit to make sure that the voice actually sounds like you. And yeah, if you're not sufficiently involved in that process, I think you get something that is middle of the road, mainstream prose that might actually be what a mainstream reader would want because it was sort of what it was trained on, but would not be exceptional, would not be maybe authentic, right? We begin to lose authenticity if we depend too heavily on these tools without being involved in the process.
I love that advice. I think that's the main thing with all of these tools, and it's the trends that I keep coming back to with writing with AI. It's just, you can't just outsource yourself. You're still the main part of this process.
Exactly. You're essential to this process. And I would encourage all authors, regardless of the tools that they use, whether or not AI is a part of their process, all authors should consider themselves essential to the work being done and act accordingly, right?
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks so much for coming on. I mean, I love Sudowrite. It's one of my favorite tools out of all of them, and I don't say that to everyone. So thank you so much for coming on. Could you just walk us through a bit about how the pricing and like how Sudowrite works in that sense, and also joining the Discord and all those sorts of things? Like, how does the whole sort of working with the Sudowrite process look like?
Yeah, for sure. So Sudowrite we're at Sudowrite.com, and we have a 7-day sort of like risk-free trial, right? So you go to Sudowrite.com, you sign up. We have plans that range from $10 a month up to $60 a month. The sort of spectrum on that, these 3 different plans, is like, how much do you expect you'll be asking the AI to do? So it's sort of a credits-based pricing, which a couple of years ago was less familiar to folks, but now with Claude and with all of these other things that are sort of like necessarily measuring based on the work that's being done for you, it's a little bit more familiar. So if you're just going to be using a little bit of help from the AI, you'll be at one end of the spectrum. If you want to write 2 books a month, you're probably going to be a max user at the $60 a month end of that spectrum. So you select a plan, try it out. If you don't love it in 7 days, you can drop our support team an email and we'll refund you for that. And it's very easy to get started. We do free daily live classes. So I work with about 12 teachers over here, and we rotate through different topics and sessions. We have a weekly welcome session we do every Tuesday or early in the week each week that gives the sort of nuts and bolts introduction to Sudowrite. And then a ton of live programming, from the things you were asking about, developing better characters, to writing nonfiction or things that I mentioned aren't necessarily sort of like core to Sudowrite. So yeah, we do that. And then also our Discord's free to join. It's just discord.gg/Sudowrite. You join. You don't have to be a Sudowrite user to get in there and figure out what all the cool AI kids are talking about.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for coming on. It's been really helpful to hear all that. And I'll see you again soon.
Yeah, thank you, Teddy.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Publishing Performance Show. I really hope you found today's episode inspiring. I absolutely love chatting to authors, writers, and people in the publishing world. Now, just before we wrap up, I want to tell you about our Publishing Performance Starter Packs. These are curated episodes and collections organised by topic that makes it super easy to find the exact content you're looking for. So whether you're wanting to deep dive into marketing strategies, explore productivity techniques, or focus on any specific area of publishing, we've organised our episodes into targeted playlists just for you. And you can find these all at teddyagsmith.com. And also, whilst you're here, let me tell you about Publishing Performance. It's the #1 platform for authors who want to increase Amazon book sales but aren't really sure where to start. Now, this show is all about helping you to sell more books, and if you're looking to boost your publishing game and to maximise your book's potential on Amazon, then Publishing Performance is designed to help authors just like you to grow your readership and to reach a much wider audience. Now, I know that Amazon ads can be slightly complicated, which is why Publishing Performance is like having a personalised ad account manager to create your ad campaigns for you, to choose your best keywords and to make adjustments in real time and to optimise them over time to save you money and to make more sales. Now, if you're investing in ads, you really want to make sure your investment is being used effectively, and Publishing Performance does just that. It aims to make your budget go further, improve your organic rank, and target keywords more effectively. You can get started with Amazon ads for free for 30 days at publishingperformance.com, and there's a link in the show notes to get that free 30 days trial. Thank you so much for tuning into the Publishing Performance Show. I really hope you found today's episode inspiring. I absolutely love chatting to authors, writers, and people in the publishing world. Now, just before we wrap up, I want to tell you about our Publishing Performance Starter Packs. These are curated episodes and collections organised by topic that makes it super easy to find the exact content you're looking for. So whether you're wanting to deep dive into marketing strategies, explore productivity techniques, or focus on any specific area of publishing, we've organised our episodes into targeted playlists just for you. And you can find these all at teddyagsmith.com. And also, whilst you're here, let me tell you about Publishing Performance. It's the #1 platform for authors who want to increase Amazon book sales but aren't really sure where to start. Now, this show is all about helping you to sell more books, and if you're looking to boost your publishing game and to maximise your book's potential on Amazon, then Publishing Performance is designed to help authors just like you to grow your readership and to reach a much wider audience. Now, I know that Amazon ads can be slightly complicated, which is why Publishing Performance is like having a personalised ad account manager to create your ad campaigns for you, to choose your best keywords and to make adjustments in real time and to optimise them over time to save you money and to make more sales. Now, if you're investing in ads, you really want to make sure your investment is being used effectively, and Publishing Performance does just that. It aims to make your budget go further, improve your organic rank, and target keywords more effectively. You can get started with Amazon ads for free for 30 days at publishingperformance.com, and there's a link in the show notes to get that free 30 days trial.